So in these videos, I'm going to talk about what exactly the mRNA vaccine is. But before we do that, we have to talk about what mRNA is. And to do so, I'm going to use an analogy. All right, so I love to bake in my free time in addition to knitting with my yarn back there. And so my husband's most absolute favorite food in the entire world is cinnamon rolls. And so every year for his birthday and on Christmas morning, I use Kenji Lopez Alt sticky bun recipe, which is absolutely amazing. All right. Now, let's say that I make these sticky buns on Christmas morning and my mom and my sister are absolutely in love with them and they want to be able to make these sticky buns for themselves too, and they ask me for the recipe. Now, I can't just give them the book because we live 1,000 miles apart from each other, but I might want to give them a copy of the recipe. Now, in this case, the recipe is not my intellectual property. So if it was my own recipe, I might copy the page or I might write it out on a recipe card like our grandmothers did. But in this case, what I would probably do is I would send them to Kenji's website where I know he has an online copy of that recipe. But what I will say with those online recipes is you got to be careful because they have a tendency to disappear with time, as I have learned. All right, so in the cell, bringing the analogy back, all right, so our genetic material, or our DNA, our deoxyribonucleic acid, contains the instructions for all the jobs in our cell, all right? So every single cell has a copy of our 23 chromosomes, all right? And those chromosomes are those DNA contain the instructions. Now, those instructions need to leave the nucleus, which we can think of as the brain of the cell, and go to other parts of the cell where they could be turned into the proteins that do the jobs. But the DNA can't leave, just like the pages that contain a recipe are confined to the cookbook. The DNA is confined to our nucleus. So just like I went ahead and I directed my parents to the web page to get the recipe that they wanted, we make a copy of our DNA, but it's a copy that's slightly different. In this case, it is messenger RNA or RNA. Now, RNA is very similar to DNA. It has 3 of the same building blocks, one of them is different, and then each individual building block has an extra oxygen on that. It may seem like that's not a big deal, but actually it is. Like and follow for part 2.